Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Friday, April 9th, 2021. On today's episode, we're going to have a spoiler-filled discussion about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 4, The World is Watching. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
Okay, let's get into it, Brad. We really haven't had many feedback sections for these episodes because a lot of it's very straightforward. But this week we do have a couple emails I want to get to, and actually a bunch of them are actually we're going to read in the speculation section. As you know, every week this is divided into 4 sections. We do feedback, we do our brief reactions, we do our breakdown, and then the speculation. But I'm keeping some of those for the speculation because some people might consider them possible spoilers, even though it's like speculation. So I think I'm gonna keep that, keep some of the stuff for there. But okay, let's start off with some stuff that isn't spoilers. Joe K writes in. He says there's been a lot said about the Tuskegee experiment's influence on the Isaiah Bradley storyline, and rightfully so, as you know, the creators have referenced that in interviews. But episode 3 in particular, I'm reminded even more so of another questionable episode of American history, the immoral the immortal cell line of Henrietta Lacks. Do you know what this is, Brad?
I know that there is an HBO movie or series about it, but I haven't seen it, so I am not super familiar with its place in history.
What? Well, I got to say, I had no idea anything about this. But anyways, I'm reading from the email here. For those unfamiliar, Lax was an African American woman who died of cancer in 1951 without the knowledge, consent, or compensation of Henrietta herself or any of her family members. Doctors at Johns Hopkins cultured her cells into what's called an immortalized human cell line, a line that is able to undergo an unlimited number of cell divisions and thus can be reproduced indefinitely. Her cells have been used from everything from cancer and AIDS research to even the polio vaccine, and has been the basis of some of 11,000 patents, similar to how Isaiah Bradley's blood has been used and experimented on scientists decades later. The source of the cells were kept secret for 25 years, and as standard practice to this day, there's been no compensation to Lax or her descendants for the use of the line. Henrietta Lack's story is not as black and white as the Tuskegee experiment, but many people view it as another example of the way African Americans have been exploited and dehumanized throughout American history. So I thought that was very interesting. I don't know. That was something I have not learned about or read into or watched that documentary. Is it a documentary or is it a series? Do you know?
It's a dramatization.
Dramatization. I'm gonna have to look that up. But okay, we got another email from Sal who points out that I'm wrong, which happens very often, Brad. I've been saying Global Reparation Council or reparation. Yeah, I've been saying Global Reparation Council, and it's Global Repatriation Council, like repatriation. So I've been saying it wrong. Is basically what I'm saying. I don't know. Anyways, let's move on to our brief thoughts on this episode. So this is episode 4. This is we're 2/3 of the way through this series. This is a short series. The title is "The Whole World is Watching," which I think comes to head at the end of the episode, and it's 53 minutes long, which is the same length as last week's episode. Brad, what did you think of this week's episode?
I liked it. You know, the series continues to impress me with what it does with the characters and the thematic elements of the series. And you know, it's always more fascinating when the villain of a show isn't a flat out, straight up villain. And series is definitely one of those. With you know, Carly being somebody who you could easily be sympathetic to if she wasn't becoming so radical, which, as we see in this episode, is something that goes to new heights. But I was particularly impressed with Sebastian Stan in this episode. In the flashback that we get, I like the conversation that Sam has with Carly in the series, and I like the escalation of what's going on with John Walker and his place as Captain America. It's doing a lot of interesting things with these characters, and I'm very much curious as to how it all sort of. There's kind of an indication as to like I think we know where paths are going for certain characters, but the ultimate conclusion is still, I think, pretty well shrouded in mystery.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I think this episode starts off strong and it ends really strong. The middle is kind of not not like bad, but just like not as good as the previous episode. I will say that the action in this one at times like took place in like these dark environments and made use of like very close up and fast cuts, and it was I had to like rewind a couple times to like I mean it might also be that I'm taking notes while I'm watching this episode, but usually I'm able to like I was so s- I complimented the action in like the first couple episodes because the geography of the scenes and the action, it felt so like it was all animatic out and you could like it was very clear what was going on. And sometimes here I couldn't tell who was getting kicked or what. Do you know what I mean? When I had to kind of like rewind a second to just like clarify what actually happened, or if I saw what I thought I saw was actually happening. So that, I don't know. That's a little bit of a criticism there, but I like you, Brad, am a fan of where this series is kind of dipping its toes thematically. Even if the show isn't about this, I love what they're kind of the questions it's bringing up about does power corrupt? Does uh does the ends justify the means? When does someone become a bad guy? And I don't know. I'm actually of two minds in this because I know you're saying you love that they're kind of giving the bad guy of the series a through line where you can understand where they're coming from. But on the other, and I am on that train too. But on the other hand, I'm like, I kind of know, or I don't know, but I kind of anticipate that it's going to be one of those things like Wanda and WandaVision where you know they probably didn't end up being the villain all along. Do you know what I mean? You know, it was the power broker all along. It was Agatha all along. Do you know what I mean? Like in the end, it's not going to be
I
the
mean, sure, but like we're getting to a point though where even though Carly is doing things to benefit people, like she's clearly made some
yeah.
poor decisions, and
Oh,
she's
for
yeah,
sure.
so she's kind of reaching a point of no return.
Yeah. Do you think that, or do you think by the end of the series, I feel like she's going to be redeemed and somewhat redeemed by the end of the series.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to say it is like somewhat redeemed in some
Yeah.
capacity. She'll realize like that she's gone too far or something like that, but by that point it'll have been too late.
Yeah. I'm just hoping whoever the villain is of this series, and we can talk about that later. We can speculate about that later. That it's not just like this cut and dry, like they're a bad guy trying to you know watch the world burn. Whatever it is, like the typical superhero villain thing. That, I guess wants all the power. Is probably it, right? Okay. Let's move into the actual breakdown. So this episode starts with the flashbacks to 6 years ago on Wakanda, which for some reason I wasn't expecting, even though last episode ended the way it did. And we see Bucky having this very emotional moment, being told that he's finally free of the Hydra programming as uh they read that code to him. So I'm a little unclear here, Brad. Like, what actually like he seemed worried that he was going to snap into it when she read off the list of words, but he seems to be unprogrammed. Like, what happened?
I mean, I imagine that what we don't see in throughout or in this scene is all of the lead up to this is he's probably been like in some kind of therapy, meditation. Like they've been working on him and helping him become detached from these code words that when would activate him and essentially turn him into a drone that does the bidding of Hydra. And so I think this was probably the first time where they felt comfortable enough that he had been deprogrammed to the point where they could say the code words and he wouldn't, and he was there waiting just for it to go wrong. And this was the scene in particular that I was very impressed with Sebastian Stan's performance. He really like put everything he's got into this. And it was a really good scene.
Yeah, and we're seeing flashbacks from, his past as the Winter Soldier and all the bad things he's done, and him, thinking about that and fearing that that's going to come back. I don't know. Yeah, it's a wave of emotions that you can see being telegraphed through his eyes and his performance in this scene, which I really liked. Back in real time, AO confronts Bucky about working with Zemo, and he explains it's a means to an end, and they give him 8 hours to figure it out before they come for Zemo, because they're not happy that Zemo is on the loose. Um, it's kind of funny that that the scene before this is about freeing Bucky, and then the next scene is them being upset that Bucky freed Zemo. Anyways, I don't know. The attack on the GRC depot last week has led to the Patch Act, which will result in the stricter borders. So, my question to you, Brad, is what were they trying to accomplish last week with that? Because it seems like what Carly and the Smashers are trying to do, the Flag Smashers are trying to accomplish, is they want the one world, and this is accomplishing more, like, now the stricter borders, and empowers the police to be bigger dicks, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where part of the flaw in this plan comes into play. Is it's when does this become too much, and when are you actually, that's when, like when Sam says later in the show, it's like you're not changing the world, you're just making the world different, or you're not making it a better place, you're just making it different. And so
Yeah.
it's something where they think that what they're doing will end up making a positive change, but it's really just changing the game in a way that isn't necessarily helpful for anybody.
Yeah, it kind of backfired on them, I think, is basically what happened, which I'm wondering if, like, those motivations of that attack last week were more motivated, more motivated by emotion than, like, 3D chess of trying to figure out where this could help them in the situation. But I don't know. Sam and Bucky believe that Carly could be turned, and Zemo argues that the desire to be a super soldier, the desire to be a super soldier corrupts and creates supremacy. So I think this is one of the more interesting thematic questions that is asked by this episode, because obviously the most famous person that was a super soldier in this universe is Steve Rogers, and it didn't seem to corrupt him much at all. But on the other hand, everybody else that seems to have gotten their hands on the serum have kind of gone power crazy. What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, it's definitely a thing where Steve Rogers seems to be the exception rather than the rule. And part of that conversation also includes another conversation in this episode also talks about the idea of that the super soldier serum kind of enhances what's already there. So if there is that darkness inside of you, or this hunger for power, when you have more power, then that's just going to you know become a bigger problem. And that's obviously why we see what happens at the end of this episode come to fruition as well. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah, for sure. The trio search a refugee camp for information, and I'm kind of wondering why did the Flag Smashers put their hand symbol on everything? It seems like kind of counterproductive if, like, they're always worried about the police showing up or something. Like, don't like, shouldn't they not want them to know that this is a base or something?
I mean, I think most of them before now have been digital. I think this is one of the first ones we see that's like a
Yeah,
physical one, right? So yeah,
yeah.
maybe it's just because it's like it's their stronghold, and if kind of thing.
I
Because it's not really like their like full on like base or layer. Like it's a place where they're like helping kids and stuff like that, kind of like an orphanage. So there's probably not a lot of cops that are coming, snooping around there.
Yeah, and I'm being overly critical here. I get that. I'm just kind of joking around, but at the same time, I do think if you're part of this, like, radical group, you probably would have, like, the symbol, like, in your home or, like, on your wall or
Yeah,
something.
I mean, and plus,
Yeah,
it's kind of a staple of these,
Yeah.
comic book organizations villains. They always leave their calling card, and it's like, well, but they never would have known if you hadn't told them.
What are you talking about? The wet
The wet
bandits?
bandits, yeah.
My favorite villains of all time. Okay, Zemo is able to coerce the children into giving him information by giving them candy, which I think is the greatest. And they tell him what he needs to know, and he gives them candy not to tell Sam and Bucky anything, which I thought would come up to like come up later in this episode, but didn't seem like it seems like not to jump ahead, but he seems to give them the information that the kids gave them.
Well, yes, and I mean no, and I think it's because if he would have given it to them straight away, then they have no reason to keep him around or take him with them. It's him constantly having that leverage over them, so that he has to always be with them, and so that he can continue to figure out what his way out of this is going to be.
That is a very good point. Okay, so Sam explains the global situation in a better way that I don't think we've heard it before on this show. The snap made the whole world come together in a way that it never has before. And when everybody got blipped back, the borders basically returned, and it kind of riled some people up because, as we talked in previous episodes, people's positions were probably threatened, and the people that uh progressed in life and upgraded in life, you're now dealing with the people that the jobs they replaced and stuff like that. So yeah, Sam asks Sharon for help because he needs a trustworthy set of eyes. And it's interesting during the scene that you see Sharon walking around like this, I don't know, this shifty place with like graffiti and stuff. And it seems like she has like a half dozen goons working for her, which seems like a lot of goons to be working for like an art dealer. Do you have any thoughts on this, Fred?
Not particularly.
No. Oh no, I feel like there's something more going on here, which we can get into that in the speculation section, but I don't know. Carly and her guard retrieved the super soldier serum from its hiding place in a graveyard, and her guard, or her right hand man, or do you know the guy's name? I'm forgetting that character's name, but he tells her that he was a Captain America fan as a kid, and he didn't believe there was never going to be another Captain America, and that's now what he looks at Carly as, like she's like the next like representation of those kind of beliefs. And Carly doesn't seem to be happy about that. She thinks the shield should be destroyed. So, like you said, Brad, I do love how the show is giving us a perspective of the Flag Smashers that isn't just the evil bad guys. We're getting their intentions. We're feeling for them. I relate to these people, even though they are doing some bad things, and maybe I shouldn't be. At the same time, it feels like I said, they're being set up for redemption. So I wanted to ask you, Brad. I think I've already alluded to this, but if they're not the villain, who is the villain of this show?
I mean, obviously, it has to be the power broker. So, it's I'm curious to see who that is, and exactly their larger place and everything. But yeah, obviously there will be redemption for the Carly, and the Flag Smashers in some capacity, and they'll probably just end up being a tool in this person's larger plan.
Yeah. Walker and Battlestar confront Sam and Bucky, and Zemo reveals that Carly is at a memorial for the woman who died last week. So Sam argues that this would be the best time to actually reason with Carly as a human being rather than like strike upon her with as cops or superheroes or whatever they would normally do. As Sam goes in, John Walker restrains Zemo, and Sam confronts Carly right after the memorial. She believes she's making the world a better place, and Sam argues that it's not a better place if she's killing people. So I think that distinction right there is very clear. I don't think anybody can agree that killing people is a good thing. So that's the line that is drawn. Um, Sam tells Carly about Zemo's theory that she is a supremacist because she's gotten the serum and the power is going to corrupt her. And Sam agrees with her fight, but doesn't agree with how she's fighting. I think this is interesting because while Carly believes she's not a supremacist and she seems to have her reasons for doing what she's doing, it's interesting that later on in the show she says that she believes that she has been chosen. It's almost like these people have come together in a way that it was meant to be, and that historically, like, supremacists say that thing. So I think that's interesting. Um, John Walker decides to go in even as it hasn't been the 10 minutes that he promised. And Walker shows up like I wrote in my notes, Walker shows up like a cop. And Carly is angry and makes a run for it. Zemo finds her and shoots at her. And I think this is interesting because it's funny that we've seen Carly come up against all these like super strong heroes. We've seen her come up against Walker and Battlestar and Bucky and Sam and whatever. And it seems like in a matter of moments, I know she was kind of like caught off guard, but it's just Zemo with a gun, and he's able to kind of like take her down. But yeah, so he takes her down, and the super serum falls to the ground, and Zemo goes over to it and picks them up before destroying them. Did you think in this moment that he might actually take them?
I was curious if he was going to take them, but like in the time that it took me to think back and be like, no, because he doesn't want any super soldiers around. And then he started smashing them. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Well, that could have all been BS, right? Like he could have been like he clearly has some other end game here, I think.
Well, but no, but I mean going back to like Civil War,
Yeah.
because
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
in the Civil
True.
War they make it seem like he's trying to activate the other super soldiers that were created by Hydra in that Arctic base, but he actually wants to destroy them. So
Very true. Very true. John Walker takes Zemo out with the shield, and he finds one of the vials of the serum and decides to take it for himself. Uh, I'm actually surprised here because this whole, we've been doing this podcast, and this whole time I've been arguing that Walker already had the serum, but it looks like I was wrong. Looks like what were you gonna say?
no, I mean, yeah, I think it was clear that it was heading in this direction because as good as he is as a soldier, he just can't match wits with some of these people, especially superheroes. And I knew that pressure was going to get to him, and he was going to try and take a shortcut to being the Captain America that he thinks he needs to be, and he sees this as a way of doing it.
Yeah. And the other thing is you can't he can't blame the serum for him being a dick because
Right.
he's already a dick. Which I guess, when power corrupts, so, okay, so the power broker texts Carly and threatens to find them and kill them if they don't give them the serum back. Oh no, Brad. The serum has just been destroyed. So I think this is probably going to come to a head at some point in the series. Zemo asks Sam if he was ever offered the serum, and he says he wasn't. And he said if he was, he wouldn't have taken it if someone had offered it to him. I'm wondering, like, does this color Steve in any bad light? Because Steve, was offered it and did take it.
But it's he was given though like the I guess the test that made it so that the doctor understood that this was someone who was pure of heart and wasn't going to be corrupted by
Yeah,
that power, and so it wasn't a matter of Steve wasn't taking it to give himself an advantage. He, it was presented to him, and he accepted, the idea of like what they wanted him to be, and so it wasn't really about him trying to himself to become more powerful. It was accepting that this was something that could be given to him and could help him fulfill this idea of stopping those who would bully others, so that he could he wasn't trying to be a hero, he was trying to help people.
yeah, I think that's a fair argument. So Zemo argues that super soldiers can't be allowed to exist. Sam says blood isn't always the solution, and I don't know. Zemo seems to be so anti superheroes in this series. Where do you think this might be leading?
Well, I mean, we kind of get that question here too, as far as if he's so anti super soldier, then where does he
I
stand?
don't think it's just super soldiers. I think he at one point he mentions the Avengers.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, he like because he thinks that they get put on these pedestals and essentially become gods,
Yeah,
and but like the in this specific situation, you know, he's working with Bucky, as a means to an end for himself as well. And
yeah.
at some point, you have to wonder if he's will take advantage of any advantage he has over Bucky, and will try and take him out of the equation.
So Walker storms in on Bucky and Sam, and just as a fight is about to erupt, the Dormelage shows up, and like it's now like a Mexican standoff of sorts. I love that badass line about the jurisdiction of where they find themselves to
Yeah,
be.
exactly.
Yeah. Uh, so the Dormelage go at it with Walker and Battlestar, and Sam and Bucky try to intervene. And this gives Zemo just enough opportunity to escape. Bucky like gets his, I don't know, how would you describe this? His Winter Soldier arm gets disconnected
Yeah,
from his body.
it seems like she knows like just the right places to hit it in order to detach it from his body, presumably because Wakandans are the one that made that thing. So
Yeah, and Bucky didn't even know that was like possible. So like they
yeah,
didn't tell Bucky how to like remove his arm if he wanted his arm like detached.
I'm sure he knows how to do it, but he probably I bet you like that's probably like a different way that he didn't know like that anyone else could do to him.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, Walker is defeated and he's angry, and it wasn't even super soldiers that took him out. And he's like, you know, he's feeling like a true bro, where he feels like inadequate in his in his abilities to be the new Captain America. John asks Battlestar if he would take the serum if he was giving the opportunity, and Battlestar believes that power doesn't corrupt; it just amplifies who the person is already at their core. Now, I know we've already brought this up, but what do you think? Well, I mean, obviously, we've already shown John Walker to he's not a good guy. I don't think. And maybe one day, maybe he was a good guy
I think he wants so
originally.
desperately to be a good guy that he puts too much pressure on himself and he ends up making the wrong decisions. And I think that the other issue he has is he lets things get to him too much and he becomes unhinged and like bordering on being crazy, and so it's one of those quintessential things where like we've talked about before, where the villains think that they're doing the right thing and they're in the right because of their perspective, but it's just skewed just enough that it makes them not the good guy.
Yeah, and they also show shades of like him seemingly to enjoy the fame that he has, like more than we've seen other superheroes. Even Tony Stark hasn't enjoyed fame in the way like taking selfies with people. Well, I mean, I guess Tony Stark did that in the beginning of Iron Man
Yeah,
for
he definitely
MySpace.
yeah definitely did that. I think that with him, I'm I don't know that he like fully enjoys it. I think he just wants so badly to live up to this image that he has for himself, but that also other people have of him, especially now that he's Captain America. And I like
Well,
his
he also
character.
pulled off the like, do you know who I am thing
Yeah, for
last week.
sure, for sure. Yeah, he clearly has. It's a whole thing where he uses his title and his position in a real asshole way, as opposed to just being decent about it. But then what I like the complexity of him as a character, because even though we're supposed to like hate him and dislike him, and he's clearly taking a darker turn, there's still a driving force in him that is fairly good. Because when they're having this conversation about whether or not he would take the super soldier serum, they're talking about how many more lives they could have saved when they were in Afghanistan if they had the super soldier serum. So it comes from this place of wanting to do good, but they just don't know the right or best way to go about
Yeah.
doing it.
Well, people hate him because Wyatt Russell has been getting death threats online because because of this show, which I don't know, is crazy
It's
because
pretty unreasonable.
it is unreasonable. People hate the character, don't hate the actor. Don't Well, first of all, don't ever threaten anybody's life. That's just stupid. That is unreasonable. I mean, I feel like the people that do that, like, they're not taking the lessons. Like this episode here, we have the heroes of this episode. Sam basically saying that nothing is worth, the blood. It's I don't know. Not that they're actually going to kill him. It's, I'm sure it's empty threats from behind a computer, but this is stupid. Um, the other thing I think that's interesting here with the themes of this episode is, or even the show in general, is not just does power corrupt, but does the ends justify the means? Or does it become just this very slippery slope? Because you see this a lot in politics, and especially where we have been these last couple of years. Like, I feel like it's very easy to get yourself wrapped up around a cause, and then it just you're what you justify as being okay keeps on slipping, right? Because it's all for the greater good. That's the end goal, and you end up making some miscalculations. I'm not trying to justify anybody here. Just, but I'm just saying, like, it's interesting that that a Marvel show would go into this. Well, I guess it is a Marvel show about Captain America, so you have to go into this kind of stuff. But John has a feeling of inadequacy, and that's probably what leads him to take the serum. And Carly calls Sam's sister, has a heart to heart with her before threatening her life and the lives of her sons. And Carly gives coordinates to give to Sam. So Sam is told to meet Carly alone on the rooftop, but he brings Bucky along, doesn't listen. Carly explains that she doesn't want to hurt Sam, and she has no reason to hurt him. And she explains that he should join her, or at very least do the world a favor and let her go, because she's doing, good for this world. And just around this point, Sharon sees that Walker is approaching and alerts Sam from afar. The Flag Smashers, uh, they tie Hoskins up, and Walker gets into like this close quarters fight with one of the Flag Smashers, and they quickly realize that he also has super strength. So I'm guessing he took the serum in the period of that conversation with Hoskins and this fight, which could have been, I guess, the next day or something. So he's finally able to go toe to toe with these super soldiers. And Falcon, Bucky, and Walker take on a bunch of the Flag Smasher goons. There's some good, like, action movie one-liners by Bucky here that I enjoyed. But I really didn't enjoy the action in this episode. And I wanted to ask you, because I mentioned this in our brief thoughts, like, what did you think?
It didn't seem like it was cut in as coherent of a way as we've seen in previous episodes of this series. But the one thing that I do appreciate in the action, and it's something that's been consistent whenever Falcon is in his flight suit, is how they've choreographed, the combat and how he uses his suit to his advantage. Since he doesn't have superpowers, and so he has to use what he has at his disposal. And so I like the certain jumps he makes and like kicks while he's using the flight suit, and how he uses the jetpack portion, as essentially as a weapon. And so I like things like that. But I will say the sequence itself just didn't seem like it was quite as coherent as we've seen before.
Yeah. So Lamar is able to cut himself out and joins the fight. Carly kicks him into the post, and I'm guessing we're led to believe he was killed on impact. Maybe he broke his neck or something.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Either his neck or his spine or something, and just immediately killed him.
Were you shocked by this moment?
Yeah, it was definitely a surprising thing because it's a hard hit and you feel it and it's pretty brutal and it's a very quick thing you realize in the moment. It's like, oh, okay, so this is not going to be a good thing for Carly and certainly not going to be a good thing for John Walker.
Yeah, I was particularly shocked because I assumed that this character would stick around and be kind of uh, what does John Walker become after Captain America? I keep on forgetting it.
U.S. agent,
U.S. agent. I thought he was going to be like, his his co his like
sidekick.
sidekick. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, Brad. Sidekick. Uh, and I don't know. In the comics, he gets the super serum from the Power Broker. I thought there was something going to be up with this, but I don't know. Maybe it makes sense. It seems like Lamar was also kind of like a voice of reason at times for Walker, and losing him, obviously we see him get unhinged in the resulting scene.
Yeah,
But I think
not
losing,
his death will clearly like is what is driving him to that next level of madness. But now there's nobody holding him back from doing the most extreme things to get the job done.
yes, exactly. And even Carly knows this, and it was a big mistake after it happened. She's like, "Oh shit, I'm gonna make a run for it." Walker goes in pursuit, brutally attacking one of the flag smashers in with his shield in the middle of a public square in front of many people, including those with camera phones. I'm guessing live streaming on their social media accounts, or at least videotaping, and so they could post it online after. Almost looked like a decapitation, but they didn't quite go that far. I'm assuming because it's Disney. And the episode ends with a shot of Walker holding a bloody shield, which I think is so great because it's such, this series has done such a great job of painting the shield as like this iconic symbol of hope and defense, and now it's become like the complete opposite of that.
Yeah, it was the last shot is definitely one of those like comic panel shots of where it's a hero shot, but it's warped by seeing the blood on Cap's shield.
Yeah. I feel like this show has had a lot of great ending an episode. Not like it's like a big shock or twist, but just like getting me ramped up for like I want to see the next episode, and then I have to wait a week. But also, we should mention the title of this episode was what the world is watching.
The whole world is watching.
The whole world is watching. So I guess they're talking about this moment. Which I guess, do you have anything else to say about this episode?
No, not really. It's I think that this really sets the table for John Walker taking a clearly severely dark turn, and it'll be interesting to see whether he goes rogue from the government because of this, if the government takes away his title as Captain America, or what happens from that. I'm sure that's going to be a big part of how the series continues for these upcoming last two episodes.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into our speculation. So the title of this episode was the whole world is watching. So I'm guessing that's going to lead into what happens in the next episode. So what do you think? How do you think social media, the government, how do you think they're going to react to these events?
I mean, you hope that it's going to be a thing where they are upset by it.
Outraged.
Yeah, but as we've seen in the real world, there have been plenty of heinous things that have been done where people are like, whatever. So
That flag smasher was a terrorist, and he killed, hundreds of people, and this was the only way to take him down, and
yeah,
there'll be all this justification from the U.S. government.
yeah, exactly. So, um, yeah, I think that'll definitely be a big part of how the next two episodes proceed for sure.
Hmm. I like that the show, the I assume that the show is going to be kind of like a more insular thing, but I like how every episode feels like it's affecting the Marvel Cinematic Universe at large in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it has that feeling, but I also found myself thinking about where we'll be after the end of this series or season, and whether or not it has any larger impact on the universe other than the potential introduction of Sam as the new Captain America. Like, does it shift anything in the world? Does it change?
Hmm.
I'm curious about what it changes on a larger playing field. And so, if anything, it's probably good that it doesn't, because we've talked about before how Marvel may have this issue where things happen in these shows, but not all casual moviegoers are watching them before they go see the next movies. And so you have to wonder how much, they have to try and keep a status quo while still allowing, character arcs to develop and unfold in these shows.
I mean, it has to be kind of like the Star Wars books. The Star Wars books are canon, and they're doing it in reverse. This is doing it proactively, but the same applies in that the Star Wars books can explain why big things happen, like why did the First Order rise and all that stuff. Here it's happening in the opposite order, where they're in Star Wars they're explaining it after the fact, but it's stuff that like I guess that was probably like the worst example I could have probably given because the movie doesn't explain it. But what I'm saying is, like, Falcon showing up as Captain America in the next movie can be explained with a line. And those of us who watch the show, it means more. Or, the how the blip affect the world and the GC, all the stuff could be explained like with one line about like the Sokovian Accords, and you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it doesn't really need to be like that big of a deal. So yeah, how big world changing can they go is the question. They can only go as big as it can be explained in like a couple sentences, right?
probably.
Yeah. Okay. Zemo has escaped. Where is he going? What is he gonna do here? Is Are we gonna see more of him? I guess we saw that shot of him in front of that gravestone or tomb or memorial or whatever it is. I know some people seem to think it's the Sokovian memorial, but you're saying it's like his family or something.
Yeah, probably. That's what I think.
Yeah. So what do you think he's up to? What do you think his end game is?
I honestly don't know. I mean, if anything, he's one of those characters too that Marvel can keep in their back pocket, where he's out there and he doesn't necessarily have to have a grand plan to wrap up this season. Maybe he's will just be out in the wild and will reemerge, in a later show or in a movie or something like that. Because I guess his.
Could this be setting up Black Panther too?
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, perhaps I get. I mean, if Wakanda still wants him and he's out there, then that
Yeah.
could come into play as a part of Black Panther too. The only other thing that I was thinking of is whether or not Zemo maybe sees that this is a play for him to somehow team up with the Power Broker. But we don't really know exactly what Zemo wants right now, other than just to not be in prison and potentially continue to try and bring balance to I guess the power that's at play by keeping superheroes from becoming these revered icons.
Yeah. I'm not convinced that it'll lead into Black Panther 2, but this is another thing that could be explained in like, one sentence. It's
Yeah,
like Zemo has escaped. We need to find him. Yeah, I mean, like it's like very easy to explain that you don't have to see the whole show. Um Carly and the Flag Smashers. I know we've been kind of alluding to this, but they stole the serum from the Power Broker. Power Broker, he wants it back, but it no longer exists because it has been destroyed. How do you think this is going to get settled? I feel like Carly and the Flag Smashers are going to have to they're going to have to relent and side with, Falcon and Winter Soldier for help against the Power Broker. I mean, as they're establishing the Power Broker as like really, really powerful character. And what do you think?
yeah. I mean, I guess there's no serum for him to get, so unless he plans on trying to get his hands on Walker or Bucky to somehow get their blood again to start work over on having the serum recreated again. He doesn't have the talented doctor that he did before since Zemo shot him. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the Power Brokers play is here and how that will resolve itself in the end.
Okay, so the next email is a theory that I think could very well pan out. I also have reasons why it might not to side against it, but I want to give you out there that are listening to the show the chance to tune out if you don't want to hear a theory that could potentially spoil a twist. But again, this is just a theory. We and this is a theory that's going around the internet in a big way, so much so that I think I got 10 emails telling me this theory. And it's something I alluded to last week's episode. So I'll read the email I think that best laid it out here. So David T wrote in, said, once you mentioned that Sharon Carter acting/appearing suspiciously at the shipping yard, I think she's the power broker, and here's why. Sharon worked for the CIA, like the former Hydra serum doctor. She even introduces the character by leading Sam and Bucky to the shipping container inside which I at least thought they could have easily be trapped. Her predicament is fleshed out in the same episode where we learn the motives behind the Flag Smashers. Comparing the two, We see both are willing to kill, and Carly is a bright-eyed radical idealist, whereas we see Sharon is an embittered and jaded former almost poster child for American intelligence, which the MCU makes corrupt. A reveal of Sharon as the Thorian extremist power broker would highlight the dangerous, dramatic dichotomy of these two characters and heighten the conflict Sam and Bucky are wading into. And finally, stealing art? Really, Sharon? Okay, so we should establish that number one, characters in the show have referred to the power breaker with the male sex pronouns. So they've said he. Uh, does that rule anything out, Brad? I think like that just further like could be to swerve later on, right?
Yeah, probably, especially because it's not uncommon for a character to use a voice changer when talking to people or something like that. And so, if no one's ever actually seen the power broker, then it could just be assumed or made to look like that it's a man.
Yeah, and the graffiti in that last episode like had like there was like some graffiti like the power broker's watching you and it had like eyes like on the wall or something.
Yeah, but
And
I don't necessarily know if that was like meant to be like a portrait of the actual power broker or just like
oh no,
a
no.
set of intimidating eyes.
But I take it like as the power broker is kind of like from afar that like people don't see the power broker is what the impression I take.
I gotcha.
But
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there. So the thing here that and by the way, this is what I believed last week. I didn't want to say it because I really didn't want to like if I was right to spoil anything for anybody. But it seems like so many people are saying this theory that it'd be stupid not to address it. There's so many videos out there. There's so many people on Twitter. But the one thing that I'm not too sure about here is Zemo mentions that he knew the power broker before he was put in jail at one point. And at that time, Sharon was not on the run. She was still whatever she was doing at the time. So, I mean, but there's also the possibility that she was the power broker back then and we didn't know about it. And like this isn't a change. She's been, you know, she has some big plan from all along and she was working inside the CIA and Shield and all that stuff. Brad, all now that this has all been laid out for you, what do you think the chances are that Sharon is the power broker?
It seems unlikely.
Unlikely. Interesting. Okay,
Do you
I
think
will
it's
say
likely?
this. I will say this. At this point, I do think you either need to have some big character that hasn't appeared in the show that would be like a big twist of like from someone from the MCU. Not necessarily someone that we've seen before, but like it has to be like some kind of big name character, or it's a character we've seen so far in the season. And I feel like the only person that we've seen so far this season that could likely be, well, it could be Zemo, but I don't buy that because he's been in jail. Yeah, I think she's the only one that could be if it's someone that we've seen in the season, right?
It's the only one that makes the most sense if you were
Yeah,
to go that route.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Okay, let's move on from there. That now that we put that out in the universe, I have one last thing. I mentioned that it could be another character in the MCU, and there was this interview with the showrunner of the show, Spellman, with Rotten Tomatoes, and he talked about episode 5, which is the next episode coming up. So this is a quote that's been going around the internet. So if you don't want to hear it, tune out now. But he's been saying this publicly. He says that there is a big surprise character coming who he considers to be the episode 5 character. And he says, and he also said, I think episode 5 will like make people cry. He says it's a big episode in this season. He says that the character has a quote strong personality, and he'd like to see this individual side by side with Thor in a future like movie or show. Who do you think that is, Brad?
I really don't know. It was I tried to think about this because we talked about this was in the Slack, and I'm honestly not sure because like I couldn't really think of anybody who was like who would be a big deal that yeah I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, I'll tell you, I know, but I'm not going to reveal this because I don't want to ruin the fun for anyone out there, but I will say that it's not a character that's from the Marvel movies. It's a big Marvel character, and it is it's a big actor who hasn't been named in the series. Like, so like usually we get the casting and stuff like that. So this is someone we didn't know was going to be in the series, and is an award-winning actress. So there you go. So let that rumor mill go until I'm sure we're going to find out next week. Well, no, we are going to find out next week because Spellman said we were going to find out next week. So yeah, if you have any speculation, questions, uh point out things that we totally missed, please send them to peter@slashfilm.com. I would love to read your emails, even if they don't end up in the next episode, but we try to read all the ones that are relevant, that we can. So please send them to peter@slashfilm.com. You can find more of all of our work at slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast on Apple, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please head on over to our Apple page, write us a 5-star review. It takes 5 seconds of your time to write one sentence, saying, Brad is awesome, Peter's okay. What? No, don't say Peter's okay. Say good, positive things. It honestly helps a lot of people discover the show. Apple will rank us higher if with your enthusiasm. So we very much appreciate that. And yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you on Monday.